All right, so today we're diving into something that honestly might not sound super exciting at first sales, but trust me, this is way more relevant than you might think. We're going to be cracking open some audio excerpts from To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is, and our mission today is to really figure out how the whole world of selling has completely transformed. We're going to uncover the skills that you actually need to, move other people and get them on board with your ideas in this crazy 21st century. Get ready for some serious myth busting.
Oh, yeah. Get ready for some aha moments, too, right? Because Pink really challenges a lot of our assumptions about what it means to be successful in sales these days. He argues that, in a way, we're all in sales now, whether we realize it or not.
You know what? I was just thinking about that. It's so true. We're constantly pitching ideas at work, trying to get our kids to, I don't know, eat their vegetables, or even convincing our friends to check out a new restaurant.
All of that. We're all trying to influence and persuade in some way.
It makes me think about how much has changed even just since I was a kid. Remember those used car lots? It was like stepping into a movie, all slicked back hair, pressure tactics, that whole spiel.
Oh, totally. Those were the days of caveat emptor, right? Buyer beware. The seller held all the cards back then.
Because they had all the information.
Exactly. Information asymmetry was the name of the game. You'd walk onto a lot, and you'd have no idea about a car's history, its real value. It was like the Wild West out there.
Yeah, it was. I remember my dad spending hours poring over those giant blue books, trying to arm himself with information before even setting foot on a lot. But these days, you can find out practically everything online. Vehicle history, reviews, fair prices you walk in, knowing your stuff.
Oh, 100%. The internet has completely flipped the script, right?
Right.
It's shifted us from that information asymmetry to information parity. Now everyone has access to the same knowledge, so the buyer. They're not walking in blind anymore.
Which means all those old school sales tactics, they just don't cut it anymore.
Nope. It's become caveat venditor now. Seller beware.
I love that. Okay, so with all that in mind, I have to ask, how does that whole always be closing thing even work anymore? Remember that scene from Glengarry Glen Ross? Can you imagine Alec Baldwin trying those high-pressure tactics today?
Oh, it would be a disaster.
A total disaster. People can sniff out a phony pitch a mile away these days.
Right. We're savvy buyers now.
Right.
We've got information at our fingertips. So yeah, Pink's saying that we need a totally new set of ABCs: attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. He ditches the old always be closing and replaces it with something much more, I don't know, human.
Human, right. And we're going to focus specifically on attunement today. So attunement is about really putting yourself in the other person's shoes, right? Understanding their perspective, their needs, their motivations. It's more than just empathy. It's about truly seeing the world through their eyes.
Right on. It's about connecting on a deeper level, going beyond just trying to sell them something.
Yeah, totally. I have to bring up this E-test that Pink talks about, where people in positions of power will draw a capital E on their forehead. And they do it so that only they can read it. It just blows my mind as a subconscious power move.
Oh, I know. I never thought about it that way before, but it's so true. We get so stuck in our own heads, especially when we feel like we're in control. And that can be a huge blind spot when we're trying to move others.
It's like assuming everyone sees the world the same way we do.
Yeah, exactly. But Pink reminds us that the person across the table isn't just a target, They're a real person with their own experiences, their own thoughts, their own feelings. And if we want to connect with them, we have to make an effort to see things from their point of view.
Okay, so I totally get the whole perspective-taking thing. But I'm wondering about this idea of taking a less dominant stance. Pink talks about this woman, Gwen Martin, who built a successful staffing agency by emphasizing humility. She talks about literally sitting in the small chair to let the customer take the lead. Wouldn't that make you seem less confident, less persuasive?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive, but Martin's approach totally worked. She wasn't about ego or power plays. It was all about putting the customer's needs first, truly listening to them, and building a relationship based on trust and understanding.
So it's not about being weak or passive. It's about prioritizing the relationship.
Exactly. And that can be way more disarming and effective than trying to dominate the conversation.
It just makes me think, if attunement is so important in this new world of sales, does that mean, this stereotypical idea of the super extroverted salesperson is totally outdated? Do you actually have to be super outgoing and charismatic to succeed?
That's what I always thought too. But Pink throws us a curveball here. He says that research actually shows that ambiverts, those who fall in the middle of the introversion-extroversion spectrum, are actually the most successful salespeople.
Whoa, really? The middle ground.
Yep. Apparently, ambiverts have this awesome ability to, like, read the room and adjust their approach depending on the situation and the person they're with.
Okay, I can kind of see that. Like they're not afraid to listen, but they can also assert themselves when they need to. So it's about finding that balance, right? Not being too pushy or too passive.
Totally. Pink uses these terms inspecting and responding. Ambiverts are really good at both. They can kind of size up a situation and then react in a way that makes sense.
It's making me think about that thing Pink calls the chameleon effect, this idea of like subtly mirroring someone's body language and tone to build rapport. Like waitresses who repeat orders back to customers word for word actually get higher tips, and salespeople who subtly mimic their clients end up closing more deals. It's fascinating.
It's wild. It's almost like speaking the same nonverbal language. When you think about it, humans have been mirroring each other's behavior for like forever. It's this deep-seated instinct, that helps us connect and build trust with each other.
So it's not creepy. It's actually like a good thing.
Well, it can be. The key is that it has to be done super subtly. Like, if it's too obvious, it can definitely backfire and seem totally fake.
It would be creepy. I wouldn't want someone like doing exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't work. But when it's done right, it's like you're unconsciously sending this message like, hey, we're on the same wavelength. And that can create a really strong connection.
Okay, but let's bring it back to this contrast between the old caveat emptor world and this new caveat venditor landscape that Pink's talking about. He uses this example that I think really drives the point home. Two different used car lots, SK Motors and CarMax.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's a classic. So picture SK Motors as the stereotypical shady used car lot. Pressure tactics, pushy salespeople, maybe a few too many air fresheners, trying to mask the scent of who knows what.
Oh, I can practically see it now.
Right. So imagine a young guy walks onto this lot, totally desperate for a car, but with, not a lot of money and not so great credit. He's basically easy prey in this environment. And what happens? He ends up with a beat-up 1993 Ford Escort, a 24% interest rate, and a tracking device slapped on top of it all.
Oof. I mean, talk about taking advantage of someone. That's information asymmetry at its worst.
It breaks my heart. But you have to wonder, how many people got stuck in situations like that before the internet came along?
Oh, countless, I'm sure. It wasn't a fair fight. But then you have CarMax. Now, they were founded on this whole idea of information parity. They don't haggle, the commissions are transparent, and all the information about the car is like right there for you to see. No secrets.
What a change. It sounds like a much better experience for everyone involved.
It is, and I think it speaks to this larger shift that's happening in sales, a move away from manipulation and secrecy toward transparency and collaboration. One detail Pink mentions that I found really interesting is that the computer screens at CarMax are actually positioned so that both the buyer and the salesperson can see the information at the same time.
Oh, wow. So there's no like sneaky behind the scenes stuff going on. It's all out in the open.
Exactly, and that's what builds trust. It's like they're saying, look, we're in this together. We both have the same information, so let's work together to find a car that meets your needs and fits your budget.
It's making me rethink the whole buyer beware thing. Maybe it's more like, let's work together to find the best solution.
It is. It's a total mindset shift.
So if we're stepping away from caveat emptor and always be closing, what does that mean for how we approach moving others? Like, what does it actually take to be successful in this new landscape?
Well, that's where attunement comes in. And that's where things get really interesting.
That computer screen example at CarMax, it's really sticking with me. It's such a small thing, but it really does like signal a whole different approach,
It's about transparency. And that's so essential in this new era of sales. You can't hide behind information asymmetry anymore. The buyer has power now. They've got knowledge.
So if you can't rely on those old tactics anymore, what does it take to be effective at moving others? I mean, is it all about charisma? Is it all about being a smooth talker?
I think it's easy to fall into that trap, right? To think that all successful sellers, whatever their field, are these super extroverted, charismatic types, the life of the party, always charming, always persuasive.
Yeah, that's kind of the stereotype, isn't it? But you mentioned earlier that it's actually ambiverts who have the advantage. And that's kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
It's a game changer, for sure. because it means you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to be influential. Think about it. Have you ever been in a meeting where the most talkative person wasn't actually the most persuasive?
Oh, all the time.
Right. Sometimes it's the person who's quietly observing, listening carefully, asking really insightful questions. They're the ones who end up swaying the group.
Yeah, they're the ones who kind of come in with that well-timed, well-considered perspective that everyone's like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Exactly. And that's what ambiverts are so good at. They can read the room, adjust their energy level, and find that sweet spot between asserting themselves and being receptive to others. They're not afraid of a little silence, and they know when to speak up and when to just listen.
That's making me rethink some of my own interactions because I tend to be more on the introverted side. And I've always felt like I had to, like, turn up the volume to be heard, especially in professional settings. But maybe it's more about being strategic and finding those moments where my contributions can have the most impact.
I think that's a really powerful insight. It's not about forcing yourself to be someone you're not. It's about understanding your own strengths and figuring out how to use them to your advantage.
So if we're not just trying to close the deal anymore, what's the real goal of attunement? What are we actually aiming for in our interactions?
I think it boils down to connection. It's about building genuine connections and finding that common ground. Instead of seeing the other person as an adversary to be conquered, you shift your perspective to see them as a collaborator. Like, okay, we're in this together, let's figure this out.
It's like a mindset shift from me versus you to we're on the same team.
Exactly. And when you approach interactions with that spirit of collaboration, it changes everything. People are much more open to your ideas when they feel like you actually understand where they're coming from.
It reminds me of that chameleon effect we were talking about earlier. Is that another tool in the attunement toolkit?
It can be, but it's a subtle art, you know? It's not about mimicking every single gesture or word. It's more about creating a sense of harmony, a sense of synchronicity. Like, imagine you're meeting with a client who's very soft-spoken, leans back in their chair, very relaxed demeanor. If you come in with a booming voice and this aggressive posture, it creates this dissonance.
It's like you're speaking different languages.
Right, the message gets lost in translation. But if you subtly adjust your volume, your body language to kind of mirror theirs, it creates this sense of rapport, of understanding. It's like you're saying, hey, I'm on the same wavelength as you.
Okay, so it's not about becoming a chameleon and changing your whole personality, but rather finding ways to create a sense of connection through those nonverbal cues. But how do you do that without seeming like fake or manipulative?
I think that's where authenticity comes in. You have to be genuinely interested in the other person. And you have to actually pay attention to their cues. If you're forcing it, if you're just going through the motions, it's going to come across as inauthentic, maybe even a little creepy, to be honest.
Right, it's got to be real.
It does. It has to come from a genuine place of wanting to connect, not just wanting to get what you want.
It's not fake it till you make it. It's more like feel it till you reveal it.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's about being present in the moment and responding to the other person in a way that feels natural and respectful.
So it sounds like it's less about specific techniques and more about cultivating a mindset of empathy and curiosity.
Exactly. It's about being open to seeing the world through someone else's eyes, even if it's different from your own. And when you combine that mindset with an understanding of those subtle nuances of communication, I think that's where you really unlock the power of attunement.
This is making me rethink how I approach all my interactions, not just in professional settings, but in my personal life too. It's so easy to get caught up in our own heads and forget that everyone else is experiencing the world in their own unique way.
It's true. But the more we can tap into that empathy and curiosity, the more fulfilling our relationships will be and the more successful we'll be in all areas of our lives.
And you know what? It's not just about sales anymore. I think it's safe to say that we're all selling something all the time, whether it's an idea, a perspective, or even just ourselves. And the more we can use attunement to create those genuine connections, the more positive impact we can have on the world around us.
I love that. It's about moving away from the transactional and embracing the transformative power of connection.
Beautifully said. But before we get too deep into self-reflection here, there's another piece of the attunement puzzle that I'm curious about. We've been talking about all these different facets of attunement, perspective taking, nonverbal cues, finding common ground. But I'm kind of stuck on how do you actually apply all of this in real life?
Yeah.
Like, let's say you're pitching a new project at work or trying to convince your family to try a new restaurant. How do you actually use these principles to make it happen?
I think that's a really great question because It gets at the heart of what makes attunement so powerful. It's not just a bunch of tricks or techniques, it's really more like a way of being. It's about approaching every interaction with a genuine desire to understand the other person's perspective, even if, and especially if it's different from your own.
So it's less about winning an argument and more about finding a solution that works for everyone involved.
I think that's a great way to put it, because when you approach a conversation from a place of curiosity and empathy, it disarms people. Their defenses come down, and they're actually more likely to really listen to what you have to say. And that's where the magic happens. That's where you create those connections that allow for open communication and collaboration.
So instead of trying to manipulate people or force them to see things your way, it's more about creating an environment where they feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings and then working together to find a path forward.
You got it. And think about it. Have you ever been more receptive to an idea when you felt like the person pitching it truly understood your concerns and priorities?
Oh yeah, for sure. When someone takes the time to actually listen to me and acknowledge my perspective, it makes me so much more open to considering their ideas, even if I wasn't initially on board.
Exactly. And that's why this whole idea of attunement is so powerful. It's not about bulldozing your way through a conversation. It's about building bridges and finding common ground. It's about creating a win-win scenario where everyone feels heard and respected and ultimately satisfied with the outcome.
So it's not just a sales tactic. It's a skill that can benefit us in all aspects of our lives, our relationships, our careers, our everyday interactions.
100%. Whether you're negotiating a raise, trying to resolve a conflict with a loved one, or even just trying to convince your friend to see that movie you're dying to see, attunement can make all the difference.
It makes you realize that in a way, we are all selling something all the time, aren't we? Whether it's an idea, a perspective, or even just ourselves. And the more we can tap into this concept of attunement, the more effective we can be in all areas of our lives.
It's about moving away from that transactional way of interacting and embracing the transformative power of connection.
Well said. And I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We explored this fascinating shift from caveat emptor to caveat venditor, debunked some common myths about sales, and really dove deep into this idea of attunement.
And we've just scratched the surface. Remember, Pink's new ABCs also include buoyancy and clarity, two equally important elements of moving others in the 21st century.
And don't worry, listeners. We will definitely be back to unpack those in future deep dives. But for now, we want to leave you with a little challenge. Think about a recent interaction where you needed to persuade someone or get them on board with your idea. How could you have used the principles of attunement to be more effective? What could you have done differently?
Yeah, keep that question in mind as you navigate the world this week. You might be surprised at how just a little bit of attunement can make a big difference.
So, until next time, keep those minds open, those perspectives shifting, and those chameleon skills sharp. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the fascinating world around us.